When I first got my faceting machine, which was an Ultratech V2 way back about 2 decades ago, at that time I started purchasing rough, and at one time I did purchase about 4 pieces of Moldavite, or what I believed was Moldavite. I purchased it from a couple from the Czech Republic, or was it still called the nation of Czechoslovakia at that time? I can't remember. Anyway, I came across a couple in Tucson at the annual Tucson shows, and I examined all their Moldavite, talked to them for quite a while, got to know them, and I picked up 4 pieces to cut. I did cut 1 piece years and years and years ago, and I put the other 3 pieces away, planning on cutting them later, but as with most of my stock, I've pretty much moved on and forgot about it. So recently I rediscovered my Moldavite, and I decided to cut some more Moldavite. And I learned that the market has changed and Moldavite has gone up in value, and it's getting very hard to find because basically you have to go into the forest and dig for it, and that's not a good thing. The people doing that are digging holes and then leaving the holes, and so the government's putting in more restrictions and stiffer fines and trying to protect the environment. So anyway, I went online to my fellow gem cutters to show them pictures of the pieces of Moldavite which I had and planned to cut, and wow, did that open a hornet's nest. It seems like 90% of my fellow cutters, from just looking at the photos of the Moldavite that I'd sent on Facebook, determined that all my Moldavite was fake. I received a number of negative comments from my fellow cutters. One cutter declared, "Looks fake to me." Another cutter proclaimed, "Apparently virtually all of it on the market is fake, made cheap in China regardless of the color, C-O-L-O-U-R," which the spelling of color indicates that fellow gem cutter and probably friend of mine is from Australia, which means the whole world seems to be questioning Moldavite. Another cutter had his fun by posting "fake" with a smiley face. So another respected gem cutter, who was also the admin guy for one of the gem cutter Facebook pages, and a friend of mine, said, in his opinion, it's almost certainly not real. People have been faking it with glass for almost 200 years. Well, after seeing the blowback from my fellow cutters, I was a bit taken back with all the negativity. I'd met with the couple selling the Moldavite. They hadn't. I'd been holding this Moldavite for years, and all they had is the photos that I sent them. So I tried to figure out, where's all this negativity coming from regarding Moldavite. So first off, let's examine what Moldavite actually is. And I'm not a scientist, so this is just a very basic explanation of what Moldavite is. So this is a topographical map showing the region where Moldavite was formed. It's called the Nordlinger Rias crater, and it's a large crater in the center of this map where a very large meteorite collided with the Earth about 15 million years ago. The resulting explosion threw all the rock, sand, dirt, debris up into the atmosphere and melted everything into a kind of a natural glass. The glass fell back to Earth, and this is what we know as Moldavite today. And this is a note by the late Jeff Graham from his old website regarding Moldavite. And I did show you in a previous video how to go back in time to access Jeff's old and now gone website because the internet never forgets. And there's a lot of articles by Jeff, a lot of notes, a lot of good information on that site, which are of interest to cutters, as well as about 24 of Jeff's favorite gem cutting designs, which he put in the public domain for all cutters to use. Now, Moldavite is a tektite, and the color of Moldavite is green. The color can range from forest green to an olive green to a bluish green. It's a tektite, and a tektite means a small glassy object of earth material which has been melted by the impact of a meteorite onto the earth, splashed up some distance into our atmosphere, and then fell back to the earth under gravity. So Moldavite is a natural glass, and it's green, and it's rare in that it only occurred in one location on Earth, although tektites have been found in other locations around the planet. The Moldavite fell back to the Earth over a large area, mostly of what is now the Czech Republic. And Moldavite has been known since the Stone Age, when early man used this kind of sharp natural glass for knives and other tools. But it was officially discovered by the public, and is credited as being discovered in 1787 in a paper written by Professor Joseph Mayer. And if you notice also on Jeff's note, that when Jeff was selling Moldavite, there was also apparently some fake Moldavite being sold as African Moldavite that he wanted y'all to be aware of and be on guard for. So the fake Moldavite's been around for a while. Now, I read an article where a study was conducted on Moldavite being sold on eBay. And according to the article, over 1,000 pieces of glass that were examined, and they were being sold as Moldavite on eBay. Another study indicated that when the Wish site which was kind of new, they went onto it and looked, and they didn't find any real Moldavite at all on the Wish site at the time of their study. And from the examples you see here, you can see that they're just plain green glass being sold as Moldavite. Note that a 20 millimeter Moldavite beads, which kind of have a skin on them, I guess the seller's trying to make believe that this Moldavite fell back to earth in perfectly formed 20 millimeter balls. And also note that that real Moldavite has both bubbles and mold-like strands in it. Large, perfectly clean glass is most likely fake. Just natural, it's just glass. Also, this one seller is giving you not only the option of green Moldavite beads, but also red, blue, and yellow 20 millimeter beads, except natural Moldavite doesn't come in blue, red, or yellow. It's fake. I also read an article by GIA regarding Moldavite when I was doing some research. And back in the 1800s, Moldavite jewelry was very popular, and they did a recent examination of 5 sets of Moldavite jewelry, necklaces, earrings, and so on, dating back to the late 1800s. And this jewelry is being housed in the Museum of Decorative Arts in Prague. And when they studied the 5 sets of jewelry, only one of the 5 sets of jewelry was real Moldavite. The rest were green glass. So even in the 1800s, it was being faked. So now I can see why almost all of my fellow cutters claim that my Moldavite isn't. So now what's my plan? Well, first off, I decided that I'd send my one of my pieces of Moldavite rough, off to the lab and have them tested. Well, I found out pretty quickly that the reputable labs don't test rough. They probably could, but they don't. They only test cut gemstones. So on to plan B. And plan B is that I cut the smallest piece of Moldavite and send it to the Gemological Institute of America, or GIA, and get a lab report on my cut gemstone to see if it's Moldavite or just a melted Heineken beer bottle. So the smallest piece of Moldavite in my collection weighs in at just over 20 carats and looks to me like it would best cut into a cushion or square design. Now the good news is that it's not difficult for a lab to identify natural Moldavite from ordinary green glass. The flow texture and abundance of the bubbles helps differentiate Moldavite from ordinary melted glass. The presence of wires of lecturelite, which is a high temperature form of SiO2 or silica, or also called silicon dioxide. And that's what Jeff described in his note as mold-like strands. So they're both in Moldavite. And I understand that someone at some time did produce a fake Moldavite with bubbles and the silicon dioxide, but even that didn't work. The labs easily differentiated that as glass and fake Moldavite simply by using a specific gravity test. So although it sounds simple that Moldavite is glass, therefore you melt green glass and you've got Moldavite, it's easy for the labs to tell the difference. Fake Moldavite is easy to identify. So yes, there's a lot of fake Moldavite on the market, but there should not be, because it's not difficult to tell real from fake. So now onto a design. Because Moldavite has a relatively low refractive index, same as glass, which means simply means it's just not as brilliant as a diamond. It doesn't reflect light the way a diamond does. Several of my fellow cutters, the ones who weren't disparaging my Moldavite, suggested that a gemstone design with a checkerboard crown would work best to help reflect the light off the top of the gemstone. So I looked through the facetdiagrams.org site, and I found several square or cushion checkerboard designs that looked interesting. One design that I liked is called Square Around Checker, and it's by Fred Van Sant. However, It has a kind of a floating girdle. I mean, that the thickness of the girdle is not uniform. So I took the design and I ran it through the tilt performance feature of the Gem Cut Studio or GCS software. And I noted that this design produces an ISO brightness of 50%, not bad, and a window of 20%. So it's a design I could use, but I kept on looking. I also found a design by Robert Strickland, who I know and really like his designs. His is called the Diamond Checker Cushion. This design looks very similar to the square round checker design, except that the girdle thickness is uniform on this design, which I'm used to, so it wouldn't be something new for me. So I ran this design through the tilt performance feature of GCS, and I get an ISO brightness of 80% versus 50%, and a window of just around 10%. So this design shows a significant improvement in brightness over the other design, and that's not really surprising to me because Robert Strickland was the creator of the GemCAD software, which was the predecessor of the GCS software being used today. So I know that any design by Robert Strickland, it will have been tested and optimized using his GemCAD Studio software, which GemCAD software. And these are the cutting instructions for Robert's design. All right, since we're cutting our Moldavite into a square, we've kind of roughed out or preformed the shape I want. You just put the four sides of the square at the 96 and 48 and the 24 and 72, and you're all set. Tighten the Doppler tension screw, and we're ready to start cutting our Moldavite. Okay, I've pre-polished all our facets on the pavilion or the bottom half of the stone with 3000 grit diamond on the bat lap, and now I'm going to go over the facets and polish them with cerium oxide on a tin lap and see how that works out. I finished polishing the bottom part of our Moldavite, the pavilion, and I used cerium oxide in a tin lap. So now I'll transfer the stone and cut the upper half. Okay, I went over the first couple of rows on the upper half of our stone, or the crown, with my 600 grit topper, and that's the first lap that I used on this because it's not that big of a stone, and because it cuts very easily. I didn't need anything rougher than a 600 grit diamond grit to preform it. Now I'll go over it with 3000 grit diamond on the bat lap, and there is, characteristic of the gem material is there is bubbles in it, and just the bad luck, that bubble showed up right there, and I'm not sure how much of that I can get rid of, but we'll see. All right, to polish our gemstone, I'm going to use a tin lap and a cerium oxide bat stick. These are the bat sticks that I get from Gearloose, or you can get them from a lot of lapidary stores. Cerium oxide, that's my spare bat stick. This is the one I'm working on. It's pretty well used up. And sometimes they're plastic, so sometimes when you need to remove some of the plastic cover of it, you just use an old pencil sharpener if you can still find some. So I get a slow drip on the lap, about like that. Make sure the lap is moist, and just put the bat stick directly on the lap, and that's it. I don't rub it in or anything. I'm ready to start polishing. And our gemstone polished right up with cerium oxide and tin lap. And so now there's no table, so I'll just soak the stone in acetone, weigh it, measure it, and send it off to BOPIE. So in this video, I cut quite a controversial gemstone, Moldavite. Who would have thought? I never imagined the blowback from my fellow cutters on this unique and rare gemstone, which is a natural glass formed by a meteorite hitting the earth. There is a lot of fake Moldavite out there, which surprised me because of how easily you can differentiate between fake and genuine. Oh, wait, I do need to solve the mystery here, don't I? Well, After cutting this piece of Moldavite, I sent it off to the Carlsbad laboratory of the Gemological Institute of America for grading, and it is genuine, real, natural Moldavite. And here's the GIA report, but I've kind of blackened out the report number so some unscrupulous person doesn't print the report and sell fake glass as Moldavite again. So this is a lesson for my fellow cutters. Just because there's a ton of fake Moldavite out there does not mean that all Moldavite is fake. I will say that it is challenging to cut Moldavite, and it's because of the bubbles. So you keep trying to cut for perfection, but you're right in the middle of your cutting, you hit an air bubble, and it's a little bit frustrating, but you just have to realize that with Moldavite, that's the way Moldavite is. So, but other than the bubbles and the mold-like strands, it cuts and polishes very easily. I would recommend you cut a piece of Moldavite, but make doubly sure, make triply sure that you buy your Moldavite rough from a reputable dealer. And if all the Moldavite rough that they have is of the same shape, it's probably fake, because all Moldavite is like a snowflake. It's all different. It fell to earth and it formed different shapes. If there's no bubbles in it, it's an indication it's fake. And if the seller, the Moldavite seller, is selling you red or blue or yellow Moldavite rough, just laugh at them and walk away, okay? Soon I'll be cutting other pieces, the other two pieces from my old stash of Moldavite, so stay tuned. And as always, happy fasting, everyone.